Commander Nixa stood before the holographic display, her crystalline exoskeleton reflecting the soft blue light of countless stars. The massive observation chamber aboard the Arxian science vessel Truth Seeker had become her sanctuary over the past lunar cycle, a place where she could contemplate the peculiar puzzle that was Sol 3, or as its inhabitants called it, Earth. "Replay the warning beacon from the Centauri ruins," she commanded, her secondary arms instinctively adjusting the neural interface at her neck. The chamber's AI complied, projecting ancient glyphs that spiral through the air. "To all who venture here, beyond lies the cradle of the indomitable. Approach with caution. They survive where others perish. They thrive where others wither. The gravity crushes, the atmosphere burns, the biosphere hunts, and still they persist. We have watched them crawl from the mud, harness fire, split the atom. They call their world Earth. We call it the Anvil, for it has forged something terrifying." Senior researcher Venn clicked his mandibles nervously, the sound echoing through the chamber. "Commander, this is the 43rd warning we've discovered. All from different species, all extinct now, all warning about the same planet. Perhaps we should what, Venn?" Nixa interrupted, her crystalline form shifting to a deeper shade of blue, a sign of intense focus among her kind. "Ignore the first sentient species we found that evolved on a DeathWorld, one that has somehow survived multiple extinction-level events that would have wiped out any of our worlds." The holographic display shifted, showing thermal images of Earth's surface. Vast cities glowed like constellations across the planet's dark side, while the day side teemed with activity. Mountains of metal moved across oceans, massive flying machines carried hundreds of beings through the air. And everywhere, there were signs of a civilization that seemed to casually ignore the crushing gravity and toxic oxygen atmosphere of their world. "Look at them," Nixa continued, her voice filled with wonder. "They build their homes on fault lines that could split their continent. They establish cities in the shadows of active volcanoes. Their children play with creatures that could kill them with a single bite. Everything about their world should make existence impossible, yet they've turned it into an art form." The ship's tactical officer, Crix, moved forward, his metallic exoskeleton clanking slightly. "The warnings aren't just about their world, Commander. The Proxima ruins specifically mentioned their adaptability. They went from primitive combustion engines to rudimentary spaceflight in less than a century. That kind of technological acceleration is unprecedented." "Precisely." Nix's color shifted to excited purple. "Don't you see? Everything we know about civilization development is based on species that evolved on stable, safe worlds. But humanity, they've never known safety. Their entire existence has been one continuous adaptation to threat. They don't just survive challenges, they integrate them into their culture." The display changed again, showing humans participating in various activities. Beings deliberately jumping from high places with thin fabric as their only protection. Others racing at lethal speeds in primitive vehicles. Some willingly entering the ocean to swim with massive predators. "They seek out danger," Venn observed, his tone a mixture of horror and fascination, "not from necessity, but from choice." "Yes," Nixa agreed, her color deepening to a contemplative azure. "And that's exactly why we need to study them. Think about it. What could we learn from a species that turns adversity into opportunity? That finds joy in challenge. That looks at the impossible and sees potential." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The display continued cycling through images. Humans fighting fires larger than cities, rebuilding after devastating storms, celebrating in the aftermath of what should have been civilization-ending disasters. "The Council of Sciences won't approve direct contact," Crix warned. "The risk assessment algorithms alone won't." "The Council already has," Nixa interrupted, her color shifting to decisive gold. "They approved it this morning. We're to be the first contact team." The announcement sent ripples of color changes through her crew. Surprise, fear, excitement, concern, all displayed in rapid chromatic shifts across their crystalline bodies. The mission parameters are simple, she continued. We establish diplomatic relations, begin cultural exchange, and most importantly, we learn. We learn how they think, how they adapt, how they've accomplished the impossible, because something is coming. She gestured, and the display showed long-range scans of the galaxy's outer rim. The Krev Dominion is expanding, consuming everything in their path. Sooner or later, they'll reach this sector. And when they do, we'll need humanity's impossible thinking more than ever. Ven's color had settled into a worried green. And if the warnings are right, if we're about to wake something we can't control. Nixa turned to face her crew, her crystalline form now glowing with determined white light. Then we'll have learned something equally valuable, why so many advanced civilizations chose to leave humanity alone. Either way, the galaxy is changing. They're young, Tactical Officer Crix noted, his tone carrying equal parts horror and amazement. They encourage their young to take calculated risks. Look at these educational facilities they call playgrounds. They're teaching their children to embrace height, speed, and danger from an early age. Nix's crystalline form pulsed with thoughtful blue light. It's more than that. They're teaching them to assess risk, to understand their physical limitations, she paused, searching for the right word, to experiment with danger in controlled environments. Commander, a junior researcher called out, their form flickering with urgent orange. You need to see this. We've detected something unusual in what they call Russia. The display shifted to show humans diving into holes cut in frozen water. Around them, the temperature readings were well below survivable levels for most known species. They call it ice swimming, the researcher reported. It appears to be recreational. Ven's color drained to a pale yellow of shock. They voluntarily immersed themselves in freezing water for enjoyment. Add it to the list, Nixa commanded, right alongside spicy food challenges and parkour. The growing catalog of seemingly illogical human behaviors had become required study for the contact team. A new alert drew their attention. The displays shifted to show various human emergency response teams in action. Firefighters running into burning buildings, search and rescue teams descending into unstable caverns, medical personnel entering contaminated zones. Their attraction to danger extends beyond recreation, Crix observed. They've institutionalized it, built entire professions around running toward what any sane species would flee from. Nixa raised all four of her arms, commanding attention. You're all missing the larger pattern. Look at their global information networks. Every one of these dangerous activities, from their extreme sports to their emergency services, has detailed safety protocols. They don't embrace danger blindly. They study it, categorize it, develop specialized equipment for it. She gestured, and the display filled with images of human safety gear. They've turned risk management into a science. Every piece of equipment, every procedure, represents lessons learned through what must have been countless failures and losses. Speaking of their information networks, Ven interjected, his color shifting to concerned green. They've noticed us. Their primitive detection systems registered our arrival days ago, but their response has been unexpected. The displays shifted to show human social media reactions to their presence. Memes, jokes, elaborate theories, and surprisingly detailed technical analyses of their ship's capabilities flooded the screens. They're not afraid, Crix realized, his metallic appendages clicking nervously. There's concern, yes, but the predominant response appears to be curiosity, and in some cases, enthusiasm for potential conflict. Of course they're not afraid, Nixa replied, her crystalline form glowing with intense white light. We've been studying them, but we forgot the most important thing. They've been studying us too. Every piece of fiction they've created about first contact, every scientific paper about potential alien life, every defense scenario they've gamed out, it's all been preparation. She moved to the center of the observation deck, her form casting prismatic patterns across the walls. We thought we were being cautious, holding back behind their moon, gathering data. But to them, we're just another unknown to be investigated, another risk to be assessed, and potentially overcome. "Commander," a communications officer called out, their form pulsing with urgent purple. "We're receiving a transmission. They're inviting us to land. They've designated multiple potential landing sites and are offering to accommodate any special environmental needs we might have." Nex's color shifted to determined gold. "Accept their invitation. But first, update the crew protocols. We've been approaching this like we're studying a primitive civilization, but that's exactly wrong. From now on, we proceed as if we're dealing with experts in survival, adaptation, and risk management. Because that's what they are. They've had to be, to exist on this world." As the crew began preparations for landing, Nexa remained at the observation window, watching Earth rotate below them. A world that should have been impossible to inhabit, populated by beings who had not only survived, but had turned survival into an art form. "Show us how you did it," she whispered to the blue planet below. "Show us how you turned a death world into a cradle of innovation." The Human Historical Archive projected across the Truth Seekers conference chamber made Commander Nix's crystalline form pulse with waves of conflicting colors. She had insisted on reviewing Earth's history personally, but now, 3 Earth weeks into their diplomatic mission, she understood why her research team had been struggling to process the information. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly," she addressed Dr. Sarah Chen, the human sino-historian assigned to their cultural exchange program. "Your species survived an ice age with nothing but pointed sticks and controlled fire." Dr. Chen smiled, a gesture the Arctians had learned indicated anything from amusement to diplomatic patience. "Several ice ages, actually, though we'd developed more sophisticated tools by the later ones. The last glacial maximum was particularly interesting because—" "Several," Ven interrupted, his normal scholarly composure slipping as his mandibles clicked rapidly. "You survived multiple planetary freeze events." "Well, yes," Dr. Chen continued, pulling up more historical data on her tablet. "But that's not particularly remarkable compared to some of our other survival stories. Have you reviewed the Black Death period yet?" Nex's form shifted to a deep blue of focused concentration. "The pandemic that killed approximately 1/3 of your global population. We have it scheduled for tomorrow's historical review. Your species survived that as well. Survived and eventually developed medical science because of it," Dr. Chen replied. "Humans have a tendency to learn from our disasters. Speaking of which, how are you finding the Cold War archives?" Crix, who had been quietly analyzing military historical data in the corner, looked up. His metallic exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber's lights. "Your species developed enough nuclear weapons to destroy your planet multiple times over, came to the brink of using them, and then just didn't." "We came close a few times," Dr. Chen admitted. "The Cuban Missile Crisis, the Able Archer incident, a few other close calls. But we managed to step back from the brink each time." "This is what we don't understand," Nexa interjected, her crystalline surface rippling with waves of puzzled green. "Your history is an unbroken chain of existential threats. Ice ages, plagues, wars, natural disasters, near-nuclear annihilation. Any one of these events should have ended your civilization. Instead, you emerged stronger from each one." Dr. Chen leaned back in her chair, considering her response. "I think that's because you're looking at it from the wrong perspective. You see these as civilization-ending events because they would be for most species. For us, they're challenges to overcome, problems to solve." She stood and walked to the historical display, gesturing at various points in human history. "Look at the pattern. The ice ages taught us tool use and social cooperation. The plagues led to modern medicine. The world wars, as horrific as they were, accelerated our technological development by decades. Even the threat of nuclear war gave us space exploration as competing nations raced to the stars. You turn extinction events into learning opportunities, Ven observed, his tone carrying equal parts horror and admiration. Exactly. Dr. Chen's enthusiasm was evident. It's not that we're particularly brave or resilient. We've just never known any other way to live. Earth has always been trying to kill us, so we've always had to adapt. Nixa moved closer to the display, her crystalline form refracting the light of thousands of years of human history. Tell me about these extreme sports your people seem so fond of. Our psychological analysis team is particularly puzzled by this behavior. Dr. Chen laughed. Would you believe they started as survival skills? Climbing, swimming, running, all things we originally had to do to survive. But somewhere along the way, we started doing them for fun. Then we started making them more challenging, just to see if we could. You recreationally simulate survival scenarios, Crick stated, his tactical mind finally finding a framework to understand the concept. In a way, Dr. Chen agreed, though most practitioners would say they do it for the thrill, or the challenge, or just because the mountain is there. Because it's there, Nexu repeated, her color shifting to contemplative violet. That phrase keeps appearing in your historical records. Your people climbed your highest mountain because it's there. You explored your deepest oceans because they're there. You went to your moon because it was there. Dr. Chen finished. Yes, we have a habit of doing things simply because they seem impossible. It drives our scientists crazy sometimes. They'll prove something can't be done, and immediately someone will try to do it. The chamber fell silent as the Arctians processed this. Their own species had evolved on a world of crystalline stability, where change was slow and predictable. The concept of doing something simply because it seemed impossible was alien. Dr. Chen. Nexa finally spoke, her form glowing with intense white light of revelation. I believe we've been approaching this entire diplomatic mission incorrectly. We've been treating your species as if you were like us, rational beings seeking stability and safety. But you're something else entirely, aren't you? The human scientists raised an eyebrow. Oh, and what are we? You're chaos adapters, Nixa declared. Your entire evolutionary history has been about turning threats into opportunities. You don't just survive catastrophes. You incorporate them into your culture. You take the very things that should destroy you and turn them into sports, into learning experiences, into art. Dr. Chen smiled again, but this time there was something else in her expression, something the Arctians' cultural database would later identify as pride mixed with mischief. You know, there's an old human saying that seems appropriate here. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Your species actually believes that, Ven realized, his mandibles clicking in astonishment. We do more than believe it, Dr. Chen replied. We live it. Now shall we move on to discussing the Australian continent? I think you'll find our colonization of that particular death zone quite interesting. Nex's form flickered with anticipation as she prepared to learn about yet another example of humanity's peculiar relationship with impossibility. The ancient warnings they'd found suddenly made more sense, not because humans were dangerous, but because they made danger itself their ally. The Truth Seeker's emergency alert system shattered the relative calm of the diplomatic mission's third month. Commander Nix's crystalline form flashed warning red as the tactical displays filled with incoming warp signatures. Krev Dominion Warfleet, Crix announced, his metallic exoskeleton rigid with tension. 17 capital ships, at least 40 support vessels. They've already breached the Kuiper Belt defense line. How did they find us so quickly? Ven's mandibles clicked anxiously as he processed the sensor data. We were so careful with our approach vectors. They didn't find us. Nixa realized, her color deepening to tactical blue. They found Earth, just as we did. The same signs that drew our scientific curiosity drew their military attention. The ship's communication system chimed with an incoming transmission from Earth's Unified Defense Command. Dr. Chen's hologram appeared, her usual pleasant expression replaced with focused intensity. Commander Nixa, I assume you're tracking the invasion fleet. Yes, Doctor. We're preparing to break orbit. The Truth Seeker isn't a military vessel, but we'll try to buy your people time to... Actually, Dr. Chen interrupted, a familiar glint in her eye. We were hoping you'd stay. Consider it a live demonstration of why those ancient warnings exist. Before Nixa could respond, the tactical display erupted with new signatures. Hidden installations across the solar system were coming online. The asteroid belt was suddenly alive with activity. What you're seeing, Dr. Chen explained, is Operation Sleeping Giant. We've been preparing for this scenario since we first split the atom. Every war game, every defense exercise, every sci-fi invasion story, they've all been preparation for this moment. Crix's tactical analysis scrolled across the screens. These readings can't be correct. You've turned your entire asteroid belt into a minefield. And those signatures in the Jovian system. Antimatter production facilities. Dr. Chen confirmed. Powered by Jupiter's magnetic field. We had to find something to do with all that excess energy. And those aren't just mines in the asteroid belt. They're mass drivers. Would you like to see them in action? The Krev fleet, apparently confident in their superior numbers, pressed their advance. They never saw the first strike coming. Hundreds of asteroids, accelerated to relativistic speeds by hidden mass drivers, tore through their formation. Ships designed to withstand energy weapons and conventional explosives were ripped apart by kinetic impacts they never evolved to resist. Impossible, Venn whispered, his scientific mind struggling to process the scale of the engineering involved. The energy requirements alone. Oh, that's just the outer system defense, Dr. Chen said with what the Arxians' cultural database identified as grim satisfaction. Wait until they meet our inner system surprises. The remaining Krev ships, reeling from the initial assault, regrouped and pushed toward Earth. They encountered layers of defenses that seemed designed by beings intimately familiar with warfare. Automated drone swarms that sacrificed themselves to disable shields, electromagnetic pulses precisely calibrated to exploit known Krev technological weaknesses, and weapon systems that shouldn't have been possible with Earth's apparent level of technology. You've been watching us. Nixa realized, her form pulsing with understanding. All those observation satellites we detected, they weren't just studying your own planet. We've been collecting data on every alien ship that's passed through our system for decades. Dr. Chen confirmed. Did you really think all those UFO sightings were accidents? We needed to understand potential threats, analyze their capabilities, find their weaknesses. The Krev fleet, now reduced to less than half its original size, made one final push toward Earth. They were met by what appeared to be Earth's main battle fleet emerging from behind the moon. Ships that matched or exceeded Krev technology in every category. But your space program, Crix started, was a cover, Dr. Chen finished. Well, partially. We really did send people to the moon with primitive rockets. We needed everyone watching to think that was the extent of our capabilities. Meanwhile, our real Space Force was developing in secret. We've had a lot of practice hiding important projects from each other. Hiding them from outside observers was actually easier. The battle that followed was brief but decisive. The Krev, expecting to find a primitive civilization barely capable of spaceflight, instead found themselves facing an enemy that had spent generations preparing for exactly this scenario. Their remaining ships were systematically dismantled by weapons they had never encountered and tactics they had never considered. Your entire civilization, Nixa said slowly, her crystalline form shifting through shades of realization, is a deliberate deception. The primitive technology, the seemingly reckless behavior, the apparent disorganization, it's all camouflage. Dr. Chen's hologram smiled. Not exactly. We really are that chaotic and adventurous. We really do climb mountains just because they're there and jump out of perfectly good aircraft for fun. But we've learned to weaponize those traits. Our apparent weaknesses are our greatest strengths. The tactical display showed the last Krev ship attempting to retreat. It was caught in a gravity web projected from Pluto's orbit, another hidden installation that had been waiting dormant for just such an occasion. "We'll need that one intact," Dr. Chen said. "For the message." "Message?" Ven asked. "Of course. The Krev Dominion needs to understand exactly why every advanced civilization they've ever encountered left warnings about Earth. Not because we're monsters, but because we've spent our entire existence preparing for moments like this. We turned our DeathWorld into a fortress, our harsh evolution into an advantage, and our love of impossible challenges into a weapon." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Arxians had come seeking to understand why humanity had been left alone by so many advanced civilizations. Now they knew, not because humanity was dangerous, but because humanity had turned danger itself into an art form. "Dr. Chen." Nexa finally spoke, her form glowing with diplomatic white. "I believe it's time to update those ancient warnings. Clearly, they weren't nearly strong enough." "Oh, I don't know," Chen replied with that peculiar human expression that mixed amusement with threat. "I think the Krev Dominion is about to help us write a very convincing new one." 6 months after the Krev incident, Commander Nixis stood before the Galactic Council, her crystalline form steady with the confidence of absolute certainty. The vast chamber, filled with representatives from hundreds of spacefaring civilizations, hummed with nervous energy. "You're proposing to classify Earth as a protected world." The counselor from the Silicon Collective flickered their energy form in disbelief. Surely, after witnessing their military capabilities, such protection would be redundant. "With all due respect, Counselor," Nexa replied, her color shifting to diplomatic azure, "you misunderstand. The classification isn't to protect Earth. It's to protect everyone else." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Nixa gestured, and the central holographic display activated, showing scenes from the past 6 months of human activity. The Krev Dominion's surrender had triggered an unprecedented period of technological revelation as humanity finally felt secure enough to drop their carefully maintained facade. Humanity refers to it as opening Pandora's box, Ven explained from his position beside Nixa, his mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "It's a reference to one of their mythological stories about releasing something that cannot be contained again." The display showed human ships now openly traversing the solar system, their true technological capabilities no longer hidden. Antimatter refineries around Jupiter operated at full capacity. The asteroid belt mass drivers were being repurposed for peaceful space exploration. And most significantly, the first human diplomatic vessels were preparing for expeditions beyond their solar system. "What you need to understand," Nixa continued, her form pulsing with emphasis, "is that everything we thought we knew about human civilization was carefully curated. They wanted to appear primitive until they could be certain of their security." New images appeared, vast underground cities on Mars that had been hidden for decades, research installations in Venus's upper atmosphere, quantum computing arrays in Mercury's polar craters. Earth's solar system wasn't just defended. It was fully colonized, in secret, while the rest of the galaxy thought humans were still struggling with basic rocket technology. "But why maintain such an elaborate deception?" asked the photonic consciousness representative, their light form flickering with confusion. Dr. Chen, now Earth's official ambassador to the Galactic Council, stepped forward. "Because we learned from our own history. When technologically advanced civilizations encounter less developed ones, the results are rarely positive for the less developed civilization. We needed to be certain we could protect ourselves before revealing our true capabilities. And now," the Silicon Collective's representative pressed. "Now," Chen smiled, "we'd like to help. You see, humanity has spent generations solving problems that most species never had to face. We've developed technologies and strategies that simply wouldn't occur to civilizations that evolved on more hospitable worlds." The display shifted to show human engineers already helping to redesign Arxian ships, incorporating principles learned from centuries of adapting to extreme conditions. Human medical techniques, evolved from surviving countless plagues and disasters, were revolutionizing galactic medicine. Even human recreational activities were providing new insights into survival and adaptation. They're teaching us how to survive, Nexa explained, her color rippling with wonder. Not just technologies and techniques, but their entire philosophy of turning adversity into advantage. They call it failing forward, the idea that even failure provides opportunities for growth. Which brings us to the real reason for this session, Dr. Chen interjected. We've detected something approaching from intergalactic space. Something big. Our long-range sensors suggest it's unlike anything the galaxy has encountered before. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, the species that had turned their death world into a fortress and deception into an art form, was worried about something. We propose an alliance, Chen continued. Earth's survival techniques combined with the gathered knowledge of all spacefaring civilizations. Because whatever's coming, we'll face it the human way. With preparation, adaptation, and the absolute refusal to accept impossible odds. Nexa's form glowed with determined white light as she addressed the council. The ancient warnings about Earth were correct, but not in the way we thought. They weren't warnings about a dangerous species. They were warnings about a species that had mastered danger itself. And now, we need that mastery more than ever. The council chamber erupted in discussion, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The species that had evolved on a death world, that had turned survival into an art form, that had hidden their true nature until the perfect moment, was offering to teach others their secrets. There's another human saying, Dr. Chen mentioned quietly to Nexa as the council voted. The best defense is a good offense. Is that why you're really reaching out? Nexa asked, her color shifting to curious violet. To prepare for this new threat. Chen's smile held that now familiar mix of wisdom and mischief. Let's just say that humanity doesn't believe in facing extinction-level threats unprepared. We've had too much practice with those. As the Council's vote was finalized and Earth was officially classified as a protected world, for the galaxy's protection, Nexa understood something fundamental about humans. They hadn't just survived on their death world. They had taken everything that should have killed them and turned it into their greatest strength.